Hi, this is Dan from Hello Music Theory. In this series, I'm going over some of the questions that could come up in an ABRSM Grade 1 Music Theory exam. In today's video, though, we're going to take a look at scales and the three types of questions that they could ask you about. So the first thing to note is that there are only 4 scales that you need to know for Grade 1 Music Theory. Those are C major, then you've got G major, we've got a D major, and lastly, we need to know F major. Now you also need to know what the key signatures are for these 4 scales. So C major has 0 sharps or flats in its key signature, so we don't need to worry too much about that one. G major has 1 sharp in its key signature, and the note that's sharpened is F. Okay, so whenever you see a G major scale, you need to make sure that the F is a sharp. D major has 2 sharps, and those are F sharp again, and it has C sharp. Okay, and lastly, F major doesn't have a sharp, it has 1 flat in its key signature, and that note is B flat. Okay, so we're going to keep that in mind as we answer the next questions. So you'll see something like a question like this where it says, using semi-breves, write 1 octave of the following scales. Then you'll see a blank stave with a clef, and then just below the stave they'll say what scale they're asking for you. This one they want F major, and whether they want it ascending or descending. Okay, so you need to make sure you're reading what scale they want and whether they want it ascending or descending. The other thing they could ask you to do it is 2 options. You've got they'll ask you to do it with a key signature, where they want you to write in the key signature before the scale. So with I'll write KS for short for key signature. Or they could ask you to do it without a key signature. Okay, so you need to make sure you really read the question thoroughly so that you know which one they're asking you to do it with or without. Okay, so let's imagine that for this one here, they want you to do it with a key signature. So we need to write in before the scale the key signature for F major. Now F major has 1 flat, so we need to write in the correct flat, which is B flat. So we're going to write in a little flat sign on the B. Now we need to start the scale. So is it ascending or descending? This one they want ascending. So we're going to start towards the bottom of the stave, as at the end we're going to be ascending to the top note. So we're going to start on this one note here, which is the F in the treble clef, and then we're just going to write in the notes for the scale. F, G, A, B flat, because it's already put in the key signature, C, D, E, and finally the octave above F. Let's do that one again, it's not very clear. F, and there we have the 8 notes of F major scale with a key signature. Now for the next example, let's imagine they want us to do it without a key signature. So we're not going to write in the key signature for D major, we're going to add accidentals to the scale. So first of all, they want us to do it descending, so we need to start at the top of the stave, towards the top. But for this example, we could either start here, because then the lowest note of the scale would be the D, just down here, or we can start up here on the ledger line just above middle C, there. So I'm going to start here for now. So we've got D, you can choose though, C sharp, and we're going to add in the sharps and later, but we'll just do the notes first. So we've got D, C, B, A, G, we've got an F, which we're going to make sharpened in a minute, and then E, and then lastly the D below, the octave below. So then we need to add the 2 sharps for D major, which are F sharp, which is over here, right in the F sharp, and the C sharp, which is up here. And there we have D major scale descending without a key signature. Okay, so the next type of question you'll see is where you'll have a stave of notes with 8 notes of a scale, but it will be missing a clef. And they'll ask you to add the correct clef to make each of the named scales. Now again, they could ask you to do it with a key signature or without. You need to make sure that you're doing the one they're asking for, without a key signature, KS. So let's imagine that this one they're asking without a key signature. So we need to add a sharp or a flat, depending on which scale they're asking. So they're asking for G major. So we need to make this note here a G. So The way that I usually do this is I imagine, I don't actually write it in, but I imagine that there was a treble clef at the beginning of the stave. And if this first note is a G, because they're asking G major, then I know that it's going to be the treble clef. But this note in a treble clef is actually an E, so that wouldn't make it G major. So I know that a treble clef is wrong. So then I'll add in a bass clef in my head, just imagine that it's a bass clef, and see if this first note is then a G, which it is. So this is a G in the bass clef, which means that this scale needs to have a bass clef at the beginning. Now we're imagining for this one that they're asking us to do it without a key signature. So we now need to go through and add in the correct sharp or flats, depending on what scale they are, to make this scale complete. Now G major we know has one sharp, and it's going to be the F sharp. So we need to find the F in the scale and then make it a sharp. So the F in this scale is up here, the 7th note, on the second line from the top in the bass clef. And now we have a G major scale with the correct clef and the correct accidental. So that one's complete. Let's have a look at the next example. So here we've got, they want D major. So we need to make this note a D. So again, I'm going to imagine that it's a treble clef. I don't actually write this in, I just imagine it. Now, is this first note a D? In this case, it is, because that second line down in the treble clef is a D. So we don't need to go through, and we can now write in the treble clef because we know that this is a D. But this time we're going to imagine that they want us to do it with a key signature. So we now need to add in the correct key signature for D major. Now D major has two sharps. Those are F sharp and C sharp. So the order of the sharps starts up here with the F on that top line. Then we have the C in there. And now we have a D major scale descending with the correct clef and the key signature. We're done. One more question to go. The last type of question they'll ask you to do is you'll see something like this with 2/3 of the stave and then a little space with it, then it will ask for the key, and it will say something like name the key of the following scales and also draw a bracket over each pair of notes making a semitone as shown in the first example. So what you've got to do is you've got to work out what key these extracts are in, and then draw brackets over any notes that are a semitone apart. Okay, so this one they've done the first brackets over the first scale, so we don't need to worry about that, but we still need to write in the key that it's in. So let's work out what key it's in. So it doesn't have a key signature, but it does have a B flat. So is this note an F? Yes, it is. So with a B flat, we can safely say that this one is an F major descending scale. We don't need to write descending though, we can just write an F major. Now they've already done the brackets over the semitones, but an F to an E is a semitone and a B flat to an A is a semitone, so they've drawn the brackets over. Let's do the next example ourselves. So first of all, we're going to work out what key it's in. So what note does it start on? This one starts on a D, finishes on a D, and it has an F sharp and a C sharp. So we can safely say that this one is in D major ascending scale. Oh, I can't spell today. D major. And now we need to add in brackets over any notes that are a semitone apart. So in a major scale, the semitones are between the 3rd and the 4th notes, and the 7th and the 8th notes. Those are the semitones, or half steps. So we need to draw a bracket in between the 3rd and the 4th notes. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then there's the 4th note. So we draw the bracket over there because F sharp to a G is a semitone. There's no note in between those two notes on a keyboard or on any instrument. And then the 7th and 8th notes, so the last note and the 7th note. So we can draw another bracket in here because C sharp to a D is a semitone. There are no notes on the piano in between there. They're just right next to each other. They're a semitone apart. So now this example is also finished. We've got the right key, we've written in the brackets. Let's do 2 more examples, just so you get the hang of it, and then we'll finish. First of all, we're going to work out what key we're in. So what note is this? It's a G. The last note is also a G, and it's got an F sharp. So we can safely say that this one is in G major. And now we need to write in the bracket so that any notes that are a semitone apart. So again, it's between the 3rd and 4th notes. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Here's our 3rd note. There's the 4th note. A B to a C is a semitone because there are no notes in between. And lastly, the 7th and 8th notes So we've got F sharp to a G is also a semitone apart. There's no notes in between those, so that one's done. And lastly, the last example, we've got a scale beginning on C in the bass clef, finishing on a C. There are no sharps or flats, so this one is in C major. Oh, I can't spell again today. C major. And now we need to write in brackets between any notes that are a semitone apart. So when you're descending, it's almost reversed. So the 8th and the 7th notes are these two notes here. So C to a B is a semitone apart. There's no notes in between those two notes. Whereas A to a G has a G sharp or an A flat in between. So that's a tone apart. And then the 3rd and 4th notes also have a semitone. Now this one's a bit confusing because it's got this tied note. You might think that this is actually the 3rd note of the scale, but it's not. These are the 3rd and 4th notes here. So an E to an F is a semitone apart. There's no note in between. So now these two are done and we're finished. So hopefully that makes a little more sense and you're starting to get the hang of the questions that could come up about scales in an ABRSM Grade 1 Music Theory exam. We'll be back again next week with another video helping you with another question of the exam. Hope that helps. If you have any questions, drop a comment below or send me an email and I'll respond. Take care.